the Radio Forest Podcast.
Hi, Forrest. Gerry here.
Gerry Beckley, how are you, sir? It's an honor to talk to you today.
Thank you, man. I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Sad to hear that you're retiring from touring. Tell me about making that decision. Have you thought about that for a while?
Yeah, I was thinking to maybe do 50 years, and 50 years put us basically right at COVID. And there was 100 shows that got delayed, and these were contracts that were already signed, and we were actually paid in most cases. And so that work needed to be done. So after COVID, we got it back in gear and went out and did those. But I knew that I wanted to wrap it up. You'll find that there's kind of two schools of thought, and I totally support both schools. Dewey, after a 6-month break, said he was really missing it and wants to go out again, and I'm excited for him. We are very fortunate to have Andy Barr, who's a lovely dude who toured with us as a lead guitarist and singer, and he's going to go out and sing my parts. But there's not a part of me that goes, maybe I should get back at. I'm very happy and honored for the time. I did 53 straight years, basically. You know, I'm trying to just carve a little more time for my friends and family, and that's what I'm doing.
Where are you going to spend the majority of your time, Australia or America?
Well, we do split our time. I would say it'll lean probably a bit more to Sydney now that I don't have to be on a plane every weekend. But for example, my wife and I were just in Europe for a month. We had a fantastic time with friends and ate too much food and all the usual European stuff. But it was just so lovely to just clear your head. I didn't take any recording equipment or anything. So first time in a long time that I've kind of had a month without a guitar right at my side.
Now, do you feel Australian, American, and British all at the same time, or do you feel more connection to one or the other?
You know, I've thought about this quite a lot. I certainly love Australia, and it is truly a home for me. I have a lovely family there, as I do here. But as you might know, Dewey and I grew up in the Air Force. And one of the things about that, as much as it's an amazing education and you see the world, I was born in Fort Worth, Texas, and I moved to England when I was 1 year old. So just the simple question of where are you from is really kind of a big question mark, you know, because it's hard to say I'm Texan. You know, I have no memory of Texas. So I remember when I was 21, I had lived 11 years off and on in England and 10 years elsewhere. And I felt maybe more DNA with England. So we were just in England for a couple of weeks, and it was still pushing those buttons. So I have to say, I probably feel as much or more English than I do American or Australian.
On your self-titled album, you've got a song called Red and Blue. I assume that's pointed American, and I felt like it was a little critical of the political situation, but yet oddly patriotic at the same time. Some of the sounds you had, some of the tunes you kind of threw back to. Is that on purpose? Because that's what I was getting.
Yeah, it was absolutely not to preach. What I like to remind people, and most people know this anyway, when you toured for 50-some years, we've played every one of the 50 states countless times. We've played every red state, every blue state. And Dewey and I were very proud to think that what we were bringing every night was an opportunity for everybody to come together and put differences aside and just share in some great music and 2 hours of just enjoying the sounds. And so Red and Blue is one of these things where I'm trying to paint a picture about something that we're all dealing with, an election coming up and debates and things, but I'm trying not to pick sides and stuff. I'm just trying to tell the story.
With the song Crazy, I also got some hints of the Beach Boys, and you have, quite a connection to them. Have you heard from Brian? I'm assuming you haven't talked to Brian himself, but any insight on how that's going?
I sent him a happy birthday the other day, and I didn't hear back. We lost Melinda a few months ago, and she was usually my conduit. I'd like to think I'm dear friends with Brian, but I haven't spoke to him in a while. I don't know if you're following it. There's now a conservatorship, which is been set up for his well-being and stuff. I miss him. I'd love to see him and stuff, but I do follow. I saw he was out with the kids at a Laker game or something the other day, and I saw a lovely some of the guys. I think Probin and a lot of I know all of those guys, that are toured with Brian for years, and they were doing and Carney was there singing. It was lovely. So vicariously, I think I'm still connected, but I haven't spoke to him in over a year.
America has done a couple of albums with George Martin, aka the Fifth Beatle. I'm sure you get this question a lot. But I'm super interested just because I'm only going to talk to a few people in my life that have firsthand experience with the Beatles. But you've met quite a few of them, if not all of them. Is that right?
I never met John. I mean, Dewey will remind me that I did at some party just in passing, but we both knew George Harrison quite well, and we had been out to Friar Park, and we met George through Derek Taylor, who had been the head of Apple and then came to Warner Brothers when we signed with Warner's. And Derek was not only a conduit to Beatles and stuff, but also we met Harry Nilsson through Derek and all the Beach Boys through Derek. He was such a wonderful man. I've met Paul just briefly, went to see him in Sydney. Fantastic show recently. I don't really know Paul, but certainly we when you work, we did so many albums with George, and not only George, Jeff Emmerich, who was the engineer for all of our work with George. Jeff did Abbey Road, Sergeant Pepper, Band on the Run. So if we wanted to, we could dive deep into the minutiae and all the stories, but we tried to focus on the work.
I feel kind of dumb. I never got the connection, but everybody's saying, Horse with No Name sounded like Neil Young. I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess so. So I see it now, but for me, it more sounded like the era, singer, songwriter, acoustic guitar, maybe the chord structure is similar. But I didn't know that in his book, Neil, his dad had said, hey, I love your new song, but come to find out it was you guys. Did you ever talk to Neil about that? Because I know you both have heard that from the fans and other people.
Yeah, I don't think I've talked to Neil about that in particular. I've only met Neil a few times. We're in the same office for many years, but he's a very private man. And he's always, the few times that I crossed paths with him, he was very nice and lovely and, hey man, and but I knew about that story anyway. So when it showed up in his book, I think, because we had the same manager for years. Elliot Roberts was our manager, David Geffen's partner. It's just one of those funny anecdotes where he says, Dad, that's not me. But a lot of people thought it was,
Tell me about this release you guys had for Record Store Day live at the Hollywood Bowl 1975. When something like that pops up, do you have a memory of that show? I mean, you play so many shows, but the Hollywood Bowl maybe is a little bit special. Do you remember that show by chance from 75?
I remember it from start to finish. In fact, I recently wrote a pretty nice piece for Graydon Carter has a website called Airmail, which is kind of like he used to be the editor of Vanity Fair. And I tell the story about that day. It was a fantastic day. Not only us, but George Martin was there conducting the LA Philharmonic. So we had a huge orchestra, which is obviously not a normal thing for us. So it was a fantastic experience that we recorded. We thought this would be great. And then unfortunately, when we went back and reviewed the tapes, there were some timing issues on the tape. There was some noise and hiss and some clicks and things. And we thought, oh, maybe we've just done a great show, but probably not going to be an album. But now, as they say, we have the technology. And with our good friend and archivist, Jeff Larson, went in and he cleaned up virtually every track. There were a couple of times when a guitar might have been so out of tune and I had to replay it to fill it in, little things like that. But a lovely, lovely memory. By the way, that was after Hearts, so it includes the hits Sister and Daisy Jane, and of course Dan Peake, our original founding member. So it's the only real live recording of all three of us. It's a great project.
You mentioned the orchestra at the Hollywood Bowl. Can you tell me real quick what it felt like opening up acoustically for Pink Floyd and they have this massive setup after you guys? And you walk out on stage with just a couple of guitars?
We did like 20 or 30 minutes. And my joke on stage, I'd say, and the crowd went mild. And we were just learning, truly learning. By the way, where I was just in London where I was staying, and David Gilmour lives next door. So I've run into him a few times. And
no way.
I say, do you remember, because it was, and I always thought 80 pieces orchestra and choir. They came out and did Adam, Heart, and Mother. So, my joke was virtually the same show as what we had done for 20 minutes.
What did he have to say about that?
Well, he said it wasn't 80 pieces. And
okay, yeah.
I don't know how many it was, but it was pretty big.
Gerry Beckley's self-titled album is out now, featuring the songs Red and Blue, Well-Worn Shoes, Crazy, and others. Gerry, a pleasure to talk to you today. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure, Forrest. Nice to talk with you.